if we think of a basketball player, you might have played basketball, or you certainly watched some basketball, and you'll see the guys or girls, they're dribbling up the court and so on, and they're looking at, the strategy. Where am I going to throw this ball? They're not concentrating on the dribbling. If you think of their dribbling, that's subconscious.
So I want to talk a little bit more about math because apparently this is a fun thing to talk about. And I want to talk about math facts because I know this is maybe somewhat controversial today, more so than it used to be many years ago. And I feel like I fall somewhere in the middle of this controversy, in that back in the olden days when I was in school, we had to learn all of our math facts. We had to learn our multiplication, addition, subtraction, not so much division. I don't remember learning division facts, though I know some do, but especially multiplication facts. That was a big thing. Well, now today, I've heard a lot of people say, well, our kids have access to calculators because they have phones. And by the time they get into their teen years and adult years, they're all carrying calculators in their pockets. And so is there really a need, as our world has changed with access to be able to do math quickly? What are your thoughts on teaching math facts to our kids? Is that as necessary today as it used to be? And I would just love to know kind of where you fall in that controversy of teaching math facts.
Yeah, that's a great question, because that does puzzle a lot of people, because I hear, different contrasting views on it. So I have always thought, and it has never changed actually, because I've done a lot of research as well, that the ability to recall math facts quickly is absolutely essential. It's just, it's not even non-negotiable. It's a bit like if we think of a basketball player, you might have played basketball, or you certainly watched some basketball, and you'll see the guys or girls, they're dribbling up the court and so on, and they're looking at, the strategy. Where am I going to throw this ball? They're not concentrating on the dribbling. If you think of their dribbling, that's subconscious, okay? But when they learned dribbling way back when they were, 5 or 6 year old, that's all they were concentrating on. How do you dribble this ball without losing it all? Okay, but they build up those things that becomes eventually, by subconscious, they're dribbling, but their focus is on strategy. Where are they throwing the ball to a teammate? Well, who's open? Where can they score some points? And it's a bit like, your math facts, your times tables, your multiplication tables, all of that stuff. As your child gets a bit older, as their math works gets a bit harder, you don't want them wasting any sort of mental ability thinking about, 5 times 7. What's 5 times 7? All of a sudden, they're thinking about that. They're wasting, their mental energy on that. Where really that should just be instant, so they can actually solve the bigger problem, right? Sure. And even though they've got calculators and so on these days, they to train for the child's brain to be trained in instant recall is so important, because you just don't want to waste any energy on that and those sort of things. So when you get to algebra, for example, a good example is when they do what's called factorization. And a factorization you've got what's called a quadratic equation. Now, I'm not going to get too nerdy in math, but basically one of the things might say you've got a number like it'd be 24, and you've got to think of two numbers that multiply to be 24, and they might add to be 11, okay? So you don't, and that's just part of a step in algebra. You've got to factorize that. So you don't want to look at 24 and go through, okay, how do you get 24? Well, I know like 2 times 12 is 24, but that doesn't add up to 11, or does it add up to 11? Let me check. You don't want to you just want instant recall. So you want to know, and I'm sure everyone at home is thinking, 24. Yep, I know it's 8 times 3, and that add up to 11. So that's the combination. But you just, those sort of things, I just want to be an instant recall. So I think one of the things, and why it sort of gathered a little bit of momentum, why to say that times table isn't needed, or all those facts, is because the argument was, which to my mind is a pretty crazy argument, that it was going to force your child into learning these things in a very robotic sort of way, and you're sort of dampening down their creativity.
Oh, goodness.
And in fact, the reverse is true. So you're, by them being able to learn them instantly, to know that, then they can be creative. Like your friend who loves doing all the maths puzzle and that. But they've got that ability to do that. And another good parallel I often use is like a Rubik's Cube, and this is more so instruction, just good instruction. Like if you give a child a Rubik's Cube, it's interesting, and then they'll play with a while, and then it becomes frustrating because it is. I mean, they're pretty tough to do. But there are actually some great. In my day, when I was back in grade 8, I found a book. A friend of mine had a book, a Rubik's Cube book, and I was able to solve it. I really got a lot of enjoyment because I was able to follow the steps. I taught myself from this book. And now these days, of course, there's some great YouTube videos on how to do a Rubik's Cube. But if your child learns how to do a Rubik's Cube, then there's a lot of enjoyment. All right, they've been shown all the steps. They haven't discovered all the steps themselves. They've been shown. They might have mucked around a little bit and discovered some steps, but really they've been taught. And once they're taught, then they get a lot of enjoyment showing their friends or family, look how fast I can do this Rubik's Cube. Whereas if they're not taught, and this is, I guess, more so explicit teaching, which is I'm a big advocate for, if they're not taught explicitly, then they make some sort of progress, but it's probably then frustrating, and they'll put that Rubik's Cube away. Much like they'll put their math away if they don't if they're not taught properly. They're sort of asked to fend for themselves. So I guess it's a bit of a long-winded question.
Yeah,
a long question and answer to say yes. The math facts are really important, and I really encourage you to at home if you've heard that there maybe it's maybe good, maybe bad. Think no, it is good. You got to know
it is good. Okay, Pat Murray says it is good in his Australian accent. Homeschool Insights is sponsored by CTCMath. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com and try it for free. For more great homeschool inspiration and resources, listen to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.